One. Welcome to Santa Barbara Talks with Josh Molina, and today's such a cool day because I'm here with my former colleague, Jade Martinez-Pogue, and wow, this is so cool, such a treat because we spent, some time working together at Noozhawk, and she went on to KEYT and did incredible things there, and we keep in touch a little bit, but it's so nice to be able to have like a real conversation with you. Thanks. Such a pleasure that you would take time on this holiday week to talk. How are you doing, Jade?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Thanks for asking me to be on. I've still kept up with Santa Barbara local news. I have, a number of friends who are still in the media news industry there. So I still feel very connected to Santa Barbara and I miss it a lot.
Oh yeah, and we all miss you and your journalism so much too. So this is why it's so cool. I know people are going to want to know what you're up to. So let's dive into what you're doing these days. You are working at Law360, and so I guess you're covering courts and the legal system and I don't know, corporations and all these things. So maybe help me understand what your new career is, your new job is. You're still doing journalism, but it's, kind of this niche focus. What is Law360 and what are you up to?
Yeah, so it's actually a pretty interesting organization. So our primary readership is attorneys and law firms. So we're writing these legal news analyses and stories, but kind of with the focus on how it impacts lawyers or what it means for the legal industry, which is definitely a big transition from working in local news and telling the stories of the community and your neighbors. And now I'm writing for an audience of, the lawyers who I don't even think I knew a lawyer before starting this job.
Probably a good thing.
Yeah. I specifically cover like mergers and acquisitions and private equity, so more of the business side of law. And just for the audience to know, I was a failed econ major in college. So doing this, it was a little intimidating jumping in, and to be completely transparent, it's not the most exciting topic out there, but there are aspects to it that I've learned to really enjoy. And I've noticed that in these industries like private equity, where there's just billions and billions of dollars, it's kind of funny to see how these people who have that money react in conflict. And there's a level of pettiness involved in some of the deals that I find pretty interesting to write about. So it's been a fun challenge. I've learned a lot. Yeah.
So let me just kind of drill down to the journalism a little bit. I mean, from what we know, doing local journalism at Noozhawk, and you're doing a little bit differently at KEYT, but it involves the story of the day. You're talking to a couple of people, you're doing some research, you're getting balance and context, and you're writing fairly quickly. And then maybe you have kind of a longer term project. And our goal is to be truthful and to write for a mass audience. And we need to write the stories in a way that are the most impactful to the most amount of people. And when you work sort of for a B2B, or like, you work specifically for an industry or a business or a community, the writing's different, the reporting's different. Can you talk a little bit about your process? Are you looking at press releases? Are you on the phone with attorneys? What is your sourcing like? How do you go about developing your stories?
Yeah, so I'd say day to day, I do a lot of just daily news stories, which with those I will look at press releases or SEC filings, court documents to get the story out of that. And then my communication with lawyers or PR people is primarily through email, just for these daily stories, because I'll just ask quick clarifications, stuff like that. But about once or twice a quarter, I guess, I work on feature stories, which I have found to really enjoy. They're usually broader, like trends in the industry. You know, inflation is doing this to private equity fundraising, stuff like that. And so for that, I've kind of developed a list of PR people from the big law firms, and I've been able to maintain like good relationships with them. So if I have a specific story, I can say, you know, I'm writing about this topic, which partner do you think would be the best person to talk to? And I think probably one of the most difficult parts of this job has been interviewing the lawyers and the attorneys, especially on a topic that I didn't have any background knowledge or experience reporting on. I found myself sticking very much to the written out questions that I had before, whereas I feel like in local news, I had an idea of what I wanted to ask, but it was more conversational. You know, you're sitting down, you're chatting with your source. And I just found myself so rigid because I didn't know enough about the topic to really kind of dive into the questions. So that's improved a little bit, but I think that's definitely been a challenge, is, you know, talking to these experts on a subject that I'm not too familiar with, and then their colleagues are the ones who are reading the story. So if I mess something up, they're gonna call me out on it, you know, it's not gonna fly under the rug.
Right. And, you know, I, when I worked for the San Jose Mercury News, I looked at a few SEC filings because of Silicon Valley, you know, and it was a lot more business reporting that I did, and not sort of like talking to a business and doing a little feature kind of stuff, but like digging into how businesses are accountable to their stockholders, and looking at deep into what's going on in terms of the corporation and the spending and where the money is going. And those reads are like not easy. I mean, you might as well just pick up a encyclopedia and like try to read it upside down, right? It takes time. Like, what is this? Can you talk about understanding that world and the amount of time that goes into vocabulary, terminology? Because we know, I mean, we take pride in our work. You don't want to get on an interview with somebody who's going to talk down to you. And when you're talking to somebody who's in this niche industry, and we're generalists, we're kind of experts on everything for a day, and we move on to the next thing, right? What is that process like when you first looked at your first filing, SEC, you know, exchange filing? Like, what is going through your mind, and how do you deal with that?
Yeah, it was definitely very intimidating, but I think I was fortunate with the team that I'm on at Law360. I have a very good boss who was in my role for, I think, at least 7 years before he went on to a manager position. So he's been very helpful and like just mentoring me, and I can, you know, ask, what does private equity mean? And he'll tell me stuff like that. But I've done a lot of Googling throughout, and I keep a notebook at my desk. So every time I run into a term or a phrase that I don't recognize or I don't understand, I'll look it up, I'll write it down. So I kind of have like a rolling list of definitions. And as I see these terms more and more, I get a bit more comfortable with them. But I think I really just had to like swallow my pride a lot in interviews. If a source said something and I didn't understand what it meant, I just have to ask them to explain it. And you know, that's always a little difficult. You don't want to sound like you're dumb or you don't know what you're talking about. But, you know, if I don't ask what that means, I'm not going to be able to use the content at all if I don't understand it. So I think that's been a kind of challenging task that I've had to learn at this job.
Yeah, but you know, it's so important that we do that, because we have to remember when we're doing these interviews, why are we doing it? We're not doing them for ourselves. We're doing it because we want to inform an audience, whether it's a mass audience or whether it's a niche audience of experts in their field. it's our job to explain it. And so we're kind of sacrificing, ourselves a bit by saying, explain these terms to me, because there's going to be a benefit down the road to your readership. And that's why journalists exist. Like, if you didn't have journalists, you'd have a lot of people who don't understand how things work, and therefore they're less empowered to make decisions that affect their lives. If you only have the experts with the knowledge and the information, they're the ones who only have the power. And so yeah, it is humbling, but it's also brave, because you're doing something that you're going to explain to an audience that has fantastic sort of potential results and impact. Jade, I want to ask you about the model there at Law360. Is it subscription? People pay for it? I know you sent me a couple links, and I'm like, oh, I can't read this, and so talk to me about that and how that works, and what's that like for you, sort of knowing that not anyone can read what you do.
Yeah, so it is a subscription only news organization. Obviously I don't have to pay for my subscription because I work there, but so I don't really know how much it costs, if it's a year-to-year subscription or month-to-month. But I will admit, like, that's not my favorite thing in the world. I can't send my articles to my parents or my friends to read them. And it also is a little humbling, because on our internal system where I submit my stories, I can see how many people viewed it. And sometimes it's not a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so that can get a little discouraging, because I think part of the reason I went into the journalism field is because I like telling stories that will impact the community and hopefully help them in some way or another. And if my stories aren't reaching people, I can't necessarily do that. But yeah, so I think it's a subscription service, and we send out newsletters. So if you're a subscriber, you can go through and you can check which newsletters you want to receive. And then those go out every day, every morning. And I think that's where we get most of our reads from, is those newsletters. So we're really big on tagging articles and making sure every category is checked.
Yeah. It's really interesting. When you have it free, right? Story gets a couple thousand reads, or it takes off. You might get 10,000 reads or something like that. And then when you're reading something that's B2B, it's just it's smaller, of course, but at least those people are reading it, are really reading every word of that story. So
gosh, some of my stories get 6 views, and that's not even an exaggeration.
Right. But those 6 views, though,
they really like me.
Exactly. But I want to talk to you about the stories you cover. What's been the biggest or most memorable or most interesting story that you've covered so far?
Yeah, so I think one really good thing about this job is that I've been able to cover some of these bigger national and sometimes even international news stories, and they are business related, but I have covered the Albertsons and Kroger merger, which is a very big one. In the sports world, I was writing multiple stories about the merger between PGA Tour and LIV Golf, and I was covering that before the merger announced. So I found it fun to this job has allowed me to report on some of these bigger topics that I wasn't able to do in local news. But I think one of my favorite things to cover is shareholder activism. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's essentially a company has a board and an investor who wants to make change at the company comes in, and they either do it because their stock prices are down, or they want the company to focus more on diversity or environmental practices. So they kind of buy up all these shares, come in and get in a fight with the board to make change. And like there's been a pretty big campaign against Disney that I think like wrapped up, but I've found those sorts of stories kind of interesting because I learn a lot about these huge corporations that, you know, I just never really thought about before.
Yeah, when you have those characters, there's this conflict, right? You have a board, somebody comes in, shakes it up. It's exciting, right? That's
Yeah.
what we do, is sort of capture that conflict. Who's going to survive? Who's going to be the last person standing, right? When, or not the last
Exactly.
person, but
The
who's going to
drama.
be voted off the island, you know?
Yeah.
How's that going to impact the organization? Jade, I want to ask you about your company and the recent union, I guess, dispute or negotiations that are going on. I've been covering the Santa Barbara Teachers Association, and I've covered a whole lot of labor disputes over my career. And I've been represented by a union in San Jose and the Mercury News. And I got to say that journalism needs unions. They absolutely do. When I got hired at the Mercury News, they're like, here's how many years of experience you have. So you're automatically right here. This is how much you're going to earn as a floor. And then there's these other skills you have. So we're going to bump you up maybe, you know. And so there's such protections for the worker, and it makes it feel like you're valued. And I understand it's hard to run a business. It's hard to have payroll, and these people make great sacrifices to run a company. And generally, a lot of these companies are kind of like not supportive of unions, especially if it's a smaller company. But they really are there to protect the worker and value the worker and make sure the worker's not exploited. And it sounds like you are with an organization that's kind of going through all that for the first time in your career. So can you kind of outline the issue and talk about your experience doing this?
Yeah, so it's actually been pretty interesting because I started at Law360 about a year ago, so at the end of October 2022, and our contract expired in December 2022. So kind of right off the bat, I was thrown into bargaining and negotiations, and I didn't even know much about the company at that time, you know. But it's been really interesting. So it's been almost a year. We don't have a contract yet. It's taking, I didn't really know what to expect, to be completely honest, but I wasn't really expecting it to take this long. We've had to fight tooth and nail on little issues, like diversity, giving our diversity committee enough money so that they can meet and not have to like take PTO to hold their meetings. We've been arguing to get Juneteenth as, because it's a federal holiday, it's recognized as a federal holiday, but we don't get it off. We get a floating holiday, which forces, you know, people who celebrate other holidays and of other cultures will have to choose between taking, you know, just taking it off. Remote work is a big one that we've been fighting for. Our company sold our office, but they still want to retain the right to bring employees in whenever they want, which doesn't make sense to me. But it's just been really interesting. I think we're at the point in our bargaining where we're really starting to ramp things up. And we've been talking about potentially doing work stoppages. We haven't talked about a strike yet, but I know if it gets to that point, that's something that we would have to vote on. And in theory, that always sounds exciting. But then when you think about it, you know, I have rent to pay, I have bills to pay. So it's a little scary, but it's really cool to see. I think there's about 200 people in my union. So it's really cool to see everyone come together and the power that it has when you have 200 people telling management that we deserve better.
Yeah. Well, it's such an incredible experience and opportunity for you to go through at this stage of your career, because you as a journalist, and you'll work for lots of different organizations probably, you know, over your lifetime. You're advocating for people, you're advocating for a certain audience in terms of providing them information, and you write about these heroes, these people who take these stands, and you know, these attorneys who take these risks, and there's all these things that you're writing about the community and the world. And occasionally those things happen to journalists in their own industry. And so it's important that you stand up for yourself and stand up for your fellow employees and organization, and be in that battle, because no matter what happens at the end, you'll be in a better situation, the employees, than where you started. And it's so important in journalism too, because we're all underpaid, right? I mean, every journalist is underpaid.
Yeah.
So we need to have a group that organizes for ourselves. And what about Cesar Chavez Day? Is that a part of your thing? That's sort of curious, because I know that, like, one of the places I teach, Cal State Northridge, we get that day. And I remember when I found out we got that day, I was like, wow, that's incredible, because
Yeah.
almost no other place like gives that.
I don't think I've ever heard of that.
Yeah, you know, maybe some government does. So you're kind of in the mix there. How does that affect your day to day? I mean, do you just do your work, or do you have meetings with people on the side, or how does that affect you?
Yeah. I haven't been too involved in the actual like bargaining process. I think primarily because it started while I was so new. I didn't have much to say because, you know, I didn't really know how the company worked at that point. But we have like our union representatives who tell us we're going to do an email action today, or we want you to post this on Twitter or LinkedIn. And so I'll participate in, you know, whatever union action that they tell us. And sometimes I'll listen in. We're allowed to listen in to the bargaining sessions. It's just over Zoom. But those always take place during the workday. And because I'm not on the actual bargaining committee, I don't get time off to do those. So if I'm not too busy, or maybe on my lunch break, I'll hop on. But yeah.
That's cool. And then you recently started to dabble again into sort of you know, traditional journalism, or writing for a mass audience. You did a freelance piece for a local paper. Can you talk about that? And I mean, were you like 2 a.m, you're like, I need to write a news story like I used to, and I'm gonna find a way? Or talk to me about, because people who aren't in journalism don't understand that yearning, that calling of wanting to, I need to be a reporter today, you know? So talk about that.
Yeah, I think I definitely was missing talking to people. I do interviews every now and then for those feature stories that I was talking about earlier, but day to day, I'm not talking to people. I'm not interviewing sources on the phone, or, you know, meeting up with sources. And I really miss doing that. Like, I love the human interaction. I love hearing people's stories. And, you know, you come across so many characters when you're in journalism, especially local journalism. But I think one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to get back into local news is, you know, moving to the East Coast was a huge culture shock to me. Everyone is so busy, and everyone's got their own things going on. And I felt pretty early on, I realized that I felt a lack of community. And I would compare it to how I felt in Santa Barbara. And I think probably a lot of the reason why I felt so connected to Santa Barbara was that I was there from when I was 18 to 24. So some pretty formative years in my life. But I think a lot of it is how much I knew about Santa Barbara that I learned through reporting. You know, if I was watching a city council meeting and they called some person's name, I could be like, okay, this is going to be like a really fiery comment, or I know what stance they're going to take, because you watch so many of those meetings that you feel like you know the person. And especially being a general assignment reporter, which is what I was at Noozhawk, you cover so many different subjects, from weather story to city council, board of supervisors, high school graduations, you know, just everything under the sun. And you really develop a sense of community from doing that, because you're putting yourself in the community and you're learning about it and you're talking to the people in it. And I think that's the main reason I wanted to do freelancing here, is to start learning my community and building that deeper connection, like I, you know, learned to grow in Santa Barbara.
Yeah. And did you just cold call, like send them an email and say, hey, can I write for you? Or how did that work?
Yeah, so it's actually interesting. Before I moved here last year, I was looking for new jobs because I couldn't stay working at KEYT from across the country, believe it or not. And so I Googled local news organizations and just sent my resumes everywhere. And I had connected with the editor of the Jersey City Times, which is the paper I freelance for, a year ago. And he was really interested. He needed the help. He couldn't hire me full time though, because it's a fairly new news organization. He just didn't have the resources to bring on a full-time employee. So I couldn't commit myself full-time to that. You know, I had to find a job that could pay me to live here. But I've kept a relationship with the editor every now and then. And I recently moved into Jersey City. Before I was in a couple neighborhoods over. And so I just reached back out and I was like, hey, I know it's been a year, but if you still need help, I'm happy to be here. You know, I have extra time in my day, and just give me anything that you have. And I was kind of nervous because, you know, there's a possibility that he could say, no, I don't need you. Like, I needed you last year and you didn't help me. Yeah. But no, he was receptive to it. And I think something that I've had to learn with freelancing is setting a boundary also, because I want to take on stories and I want to do more local journalism, but I have to remind myself that I do have another full-time job that takes priority. And so before, I would get a little overwhelmed because the editor of the Jersey City Times would send me all these stories and I want to take them, but realistically I just didn't have the bandwidth to do so. So I've kind of had to learn to express myself and communicate that more. But since I've been able to do that, it's been pretty good. And I'm excited to be able to, you know, be in the community doing that work again.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I do want to say that your rise, so to speak, you know, your success so far, you know, your mid-20s, 25, I guess, I don't know, but like, it's great. It's impressive. And you're very much a role model for, I think, young journalists, because it can be really easy to settle. It can be really easy to get comfortable. It can be real easy to just sort of feel like this is my ceiling because it feels good. But you are aspirational. And I mean that in a good way, right? You're always thinking like, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? And I want to get better, both to my own personal fulfillment, but also, of course, economically, financially, and just growth and development. And so it's so cool that you are so ambitious, because that's the best part of being a journalist and really being a human being, is setting goals and trying to achieve them. And eventually you're going to achieve everything you want. And you are not somebody who's like, you know, I'll just stay at Noozhawk forever because it's easy, right? You're like, wow, I'm worth more, and I want more, and I want more experiences, and I'm going to go out and find them. So I think that's awesome. And if we think about like 10 years from now, you know, what you're going to be doing, it's going to be amazing, right? We have no clue, you know, if you've done this much already. I want to say, Jade, because I do follow you on Instagram, and I do see your photography, right? It looks like you're living the good life, like the glamorous life in New York, and you know, you're kind of just in these beautiful backgrounds, backdrops, these incredible settings, and you look really happy. Can you talk about the lifestyle, the culture of what it's like to be in New York, New Jersey, the East Coast? And obviously it's different than Santa Barbara, but talk about the lifestyle there.
Yeah, it's definitely different than Santa Barbara. And I love Santa Barbara, but I think, it's just objectively a little bit slower pace of life there. It's a beach town. And here, I think I mentioned it earlier, and the thing that probably surprised me the most is just how fast the pace of life is. Everyone is busy and everyone's doing their own thing. And I think at first that contributed to my like lack of the sense of community, but also in a way, I've gained confidence because I realized that no one cares what I'm doing. No one's watching me because everyone is just so like lasered in on whatever's going on and whatever event they have to get to or stuff like that. But what I like about where I'm at right now is I'm in Jersey City, so it's right across the water from Manhattan. It's like a 7-minute subway ride to get there. So I can be in that populated, busy area and I can go do things there, but then I can come back, and I'd say Jersey City is probably like a mid-sized city. We have skyscrapers, there's lots of restaurants and bars and stuff, but it's not like so compact. And the neighborhood I'm in is like, it is a neighborhood. There are a lot of families here, but there are a lot of young people. It's just so diverse. So I'm really happy with where I am right now, and that I've kind of learned to take the busyness and not see it as like a isolating aspect, but like a way to use it to kind of empower myself. If that makes sense.
Yeah, well, it does, because I grew up in Goleta, Santa Barbara, and even to this day, I always feel like judged. I always feel like people are like kind of, looking, what are you doing? Who are you? Like I always feel like, and that's not like an ego thing. I always feel like people are paying attention to me. Like there's something, what's wrong with me? Or why are people looking at me? Like, why do they care? But when I worked in the Bay Area, when I worked in San Jose, which is the 10th biggest city in the country and a total melting pot, it's the first time I ever felt like no one cares anything about you. You're just another person in this sea of diverse people. And you would think that would be lonely, but it was actually incredibly empowering, because I felt like, wow, I can just be me. I don't have to worry what anyone else thinks of me. I can just be me. And that growth was incredible. And I think it's one of the benefits of being around different cultures and lifestyles and generations, because you're just like, no one's judging me. But what that means is I can do anything I want because I'm fearless now, And so I can kind of understand that. Have you done all the New Yorker things like Rockefeller Center and Times Square, and have you been to the 9/11, the new towers? I mean, have you done those kind of things? What do you think of New York?
Yeah, I think I did a lot of those things pretty early on, Empire State Building, Statue of Liberty, all of that. And they're definitely exciting, like when you first do them. And I think everyone should like do the Statue of Liberty or go to Times Square once. But I think after being here a while, I've realized that those things are kind of like the worst parts about New York City. Like I hate Times Square. It is so crowded. It's like hard to walk. It's beautiful. Don't get me wrong. Like it's so cool to see all the billboards, and especially like at nighttime, it looks like it's daytime because the lights are just so bright. But what I really have found that I like most about the city is all the different like neighborhoods and communities. My favorite part, you can walk through Soho and then Little Italy and then Chinatown all on the same street. Like you can stay on the same street and go through 3 different neighborhoods. And you can see the way the shops change, and it's just so diverse, and it's really cool.
the buildings, the architecture is so
Mhm.
impressive. Just the modern things, the historical
Beautiful.
things. It's just like, whoa, I can't believe this stuff. Because I've been to New York once, and I just remember thinking, wow, there's like so many people, and it's so fast paced, and
Yeah.
everyone's just doing everything all the time, and like it was just blew my mind when it was there. But it was so cool. I loved it. Um, let's talk a little bit, Jade, about some not personal stuff, but some of our common interests
Yeah.
related to popular culture. And you one of the cool things of working with you was also like in addition to being inspired by your journalism, be like, I got to keep up with her, she's really good. Is being able to talk about some pop culture things. And we talked about Taylor Swift a lot when you were here. And now she just became a billionaire. Did you see that
Yeah.
story? Like, she's legit billionaire now. And I don't know if you've seen the movie or not, but she's still like growing. She's almost, I don't know, this is the old person, she's almost Madonna level. Maybe she surpassed Madonna, I don't know, but she's big, right? She's forever
Yeah.
going to be part of our pop culture. And now she's messing up the NFL. No, I'm kidding. She's dating Travis Kelce. So what's going on with your Taylor Swift adoration, and what do
Ah.
you think of her relationship with Travis Kelce and all the attention she's getting for that?
Well, I think first off, just to start with like her fandom or her fame right now is that, I've been a fan of Taylor Swift since I was in like second grade when she put out her first album. And then as she put out more and more music, I always thought like, okay, she's getting more and more popular. But the level of fame that she's risen to right now, like always think she's at the peak of her career, and then it explodes even more. I'm sure you saw that, I forget which news organization, but one of like the national news organizations hired a Taylor Swift reporter recently, like to analyze the impacts that she has, because like
Jade, I just
she'll
want to know, did you put in your application? Have you already done that?
I was going to, but you needed a video submission, and like I'm not that great, and my boyfriend refused to film me for that. So no, but I wanted to. But it's just crazy. Like she'll post that it's election day in these states, and you'll see voter registration spike in those states. Like the amount of impact she has is like unbelievable, and it's scary. Kind of like I'm a fan, and I'm kind of like, okay, people need to like calm down a little bit.
That's a song lyric right there.
Yeah, you
It's in
need to
your
calm down. But I really like her relationship with Travis Kelce. I think in the past she's stuck to people who are in a similar industry, either in music or film and acting. And obviously I'm not famous, but like I can see how someone could in a similar industry could maybe get intimidated by her success and her level of fame. And so I think with someone who is huge in their very, very different industry, sports, football, there's no competing at all. And I think I saw that like Travis Kelce had a dating show a couple years ago. Like this dude obviously loves to be in the spotlight. He's not scared of it. And
yeah.
I think like that's the kind of thing that she needs, because at her level of fame right now, I imagine it's very hard to get privacy. So
So do you have this sense of like, oh, I'm a real Taylor Swift fan because I knew her from the beginning and I've been listening to her. Do you kind of get bugged? What kind of like how everybody now loves her?
yeah. I don't really care that like, everybody now loves her. I do think that like I'll be a fan till the day I die, but I can admit like I think her newer music is worse than her older music. I think the Red album, like everything after that, with the exception maybe like the Pandemic albums were really good.
Uh-huh.
But I sometimes like when I see these newer fans who were like, oh, I just heard this new song called You Belong With Me. Like that came out in 2008, like when I was a kid.
Right.
Um, and it's really interesting because I have younger sisters, and I have one who just turned 13 in October, and she is obsessed with Taylor Swift right now, like insanely obsessed. And like I love Taylor Swift, but kind of watching her, I'm like, oh, Rose, like, come on, like, stop it.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Um, but no, I think it's cool. I think a reason why she has such a strong fan base is that people feel really connected to her music, and can use it as an outlet for their feelings or whatever. So I don't think it's ever a negative thing.
Yeah, well, she did 5 nights in LA at whatever, forgetting the name of the stadium there, but the seats 100,000 people. And what's interesting about her is, certainly because I'm older and my sort of peer group's different than yours, is a lot of like middle-aged moms love Taylor Swift too. And I think that's like her audience is kind of doubled because my Instagram feed, like every mom around my age who went to take their daughter to the show, I mean, they're dressed up. Like they're like
Yeah.
wearing formal wear and they're uh, excited. And so I think Taylor Swift kind of appeals to the moms too, the music.
Mhm.
That's also what's driving this is it unites moms and daughters to be able to sing in the car, or just kind of rock out and, moms and children or whatever, but mostly moms and daughters are bonding over this music and usually don't see that. Usually the music is kind of a backlash or different than the parents' music. My kids will listen to Alanis Morissette and they'll like a few of their songs, but I don't think it's the same level of what I enjoy about her. So it's sort of interesting. Jade, you have a big trip planned. You're going somewhere to watch Taylor Swift. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I'm going to Amsterdam to watch Taylor Swift.
Wow.
I couldn't, obviously, I would have gone to a show in the US, but I couldn't get tickets with the whole Ticketmaster thing. And I didn't really know. I guess you had to sign up for specific dates, and I only signed up for one because I thought I just needed one to get, whatever tickets to the tour. So I wasn't able to get tickets for the US. And so when the European leg was announced, I was like, why not? And I woke up at 2 a.m. to get in the queue for these tickets because it was on Amsterdam time. I didn't even know what tickets I got because the whole page was in Dutch. I just looked for one that was like in my price range, and I bought three. I'm going with two of my friends. One of them is Lily Dallow from KEYT.
I've heard of her. Yeah.
Yeah. And so after I got the tickets, I like Google translated the page because I was just trying to go fast, like make sure they were in my cart, make sure I got them. And it turns out I got floor seats. So
Wow.
yeah, I'm really excited. Still have to buy a flight to Amsterdam, which that'll be expensive. But yeah, no, I'm excited. I've never been to Amsterdam. And it'll be just like a fun trip to go see my favorite artist.
Yeah, that's so cool. Well, you were reading those SEC, filings, so I'm sure that prepared you for reading the Dutch, website. You're like,
Yeah.
I can figure this out. I know
All
what
the
to do.
same.
So I do have to say, and I guess this is outing a little bit of private thing, but I want to address it head on. Was Garrett is not a Taylor Swift fan, right?
Yeah.
And you are. How do you navigate, a household where there's over Taylor Swift?
Yeah, well, I can like listen to it in the car, we can do that. I think he just doesn't like to talk about her a lot. And so like, I love pop culture. I love entertainment news. I eat it up. So I just have found like other friends to talk about that too when I see, oh, did you see that video of Taylor running to hug Travis at the Argentina show? You know, he just doesn't care about that. I feel it's very understandable. I get
Right.
it.
Have you seen the Eras movie yet?
Yeah, I did. I wouldn't go, I saw it by myself this is the first time I've ever seen a movie by myself. So that was a big experience for me.
And were you in a room with a bunch of 10-year-old girls, or was it a diverse crowd?
No, I saw it pretty late on, probably like a month after it came out. So the theater wasn't crazy packed. There was like there were some older women there. There were, you know, little 5-year-olds. It was a pretty big mix. I really liked the movie. I think I would have liked it more had I seen the show like live in person beforehand, because it is just the concert like filmed. And I probably would have had more fun if I went with a friend and not by myself, but it was still good.
Well, you can stream it one day and pack the
Yeah.
house with whatever you want. I do have to say, though, in my household, we are definitely Team Olivia because, you know, I know, and they have their rivalry too that I like jumped into. I guess Olivia, like one of her songs sounds like Endless Summer or Cruel Summer.
Cruel Summer.
Like she has to pay her royalties. I don't even know if that's what the conflict is over. But my 9-year-old daughter and I, we've been watching High School Musical, the series, and that's what Olivia blew up on that show, right? And she's incredible. Like she's so talented in that show. Like her songs are just like unreal. And it's so funny because in the show, they're like, you know, in the context of the casting, like she's going to be a star. She's going to be a star. That's part of the storyline. And then she actually became a star, like in real life kind of thing. Where do you stand, Jade, on Olivia Rodrigo? Because the reason I even know about Olivia is because of you. And we went to a concert, and I remember this very distinctly. You said, you know who Olivia Rodrigo is, right? I'm like, no. Like High School Musical? Like, no, I don't know who she is. She's like, Josh, come on. Driver's license? I'm like,
yeah. But
now you've unleashed a monster because, you know, I've watched way too many YouTube videos now. But where do you stand on her?
I love her. Like, I love her music. I do think that maybe, like, I loved her first album, but I think with her second one, if I was like a couple years younger, it probably would have resonated with me more. I still think it's like so fun. She's got a lot of angry songs that I like to, you know, run to. She's got good running music. No, but I think she's incredibly talented, especially for her age. I think she's like, what, 20 or maybe 21. But she was definitely a teenager when she started. And I can see like definitely parallels with her and Taylor, and just having this huge career at such a young age and being just really of a powerhouse of a, you know, female vocalist. I'll plead the fifth on their little feud. I can see both sides. I don't know enough about the music industry to take a stance. I could see why Taylor wanted her money, and I could see why Olivia felt burned by that. So,
yeah, well, it is kind of cool though to see, because 20 years old, Taylor Swift, I don't know, she's in her mid-30s or something like that. So, just two different parts of their career, and both making great music that are impacting lots of people. So what you're saying is you run really hard to Vampire. Is that what you're saying? Is for Olivia Rodrigo's song? Is that the one?
I do, yeah. I like that one, and the what's the other one? Get Him Back, I think is one that I really like to run to.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's great catching up with you, Jade, and sort of talking about your career and what you're doing now, and what are your, as we wrap up, we are filming this over the holiday break, and you have the incredible tree behind you, you know, so we're in that season. What are your plans for this holiday weekend and holiday coming up?
Yeah, so I think Garrett and I are going to go try and watch the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade in person tomorrow, which is so cool because grew up watching it on TV. I don't really know what to expect, but I'm expecting cold and crowded. But I think that's probably one of those other things that you have to do at least once if you're living here. And Garrett has family in Connecticut, so we're just gonna take the train over. It's like an hour and a half train ride. I make my famous mac and cheese. It's very well loved, so I'll be contributing that for Thanksgiving.
Is there anything in the mac and cheese, or is it just the mac and cheese?
It's like it's a baked mac and cheese with like panko on top that you get
Oh,
all like golden brown. It's always a hit.
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, always a pleasure, and it's about 1 year since you've been there, so it's perfect timing to check in and have a conversation with you. And again, you're doing fantastic, and you're a role model, inspirational. You're doing exactly what you want to do and taking advantage of life and opportunities. And it's so cool to watch your career grow and develop. Although I will say right now, I miss you at Noozhawk for sure, but that's the way it goes. You're doing bigger and better things. So
I might be back someday.
yes, and who knows, maybe I'll still be around. I don't know. But anyway, thanks a lot, Jade Martinez-Pogue. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.